السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام.
وعليكم السلام.
معذرة تأخرنا شوي، الإنترنت كان شو يا دانا. أوكي طيب، والله حد مشكلة كله على الويتنج روم. أوكي
دكتور، في كثير طلاب على الويتنج روم.
والله هي أنا يعني هذا اللي مأخرني أصلاً، إنه قاعد بعمل أدميشن للي على الويتنج روم. الآن لغاية الآن ما ظلش عندي ولا واحد على الويتنج روم، بس ما بعرف إذا في.
دكتور كان معلق مش راضي يعمل جويننج عن طريق الاي ليرنينج، بس
آه.
اللينك اللي بعثوه على الجروب اشتغل.
أوكي تمام.
دكتور المحاضرة مسجلة؟
طبعا مسجلة. أيوة، مش مبين عندك الريكوردينج؟
يس.
أوكي. إن شاء الله أكثر، بده يقعد الواحد ربع ساعة هو يعمل بس admission. أوكي طيب 106. أوكي لغاية الآن ما ظلش حدا على الويتنج روم. أوكي let's start. See what's on the chat. PDF دكتور موجود لنا؟ لا ما في، حكينا من قبل إنه ما في للأسف. alright okay. كمان اوكي. هاي دينا بتحكي لكم انه بكره او الخميس يعني بتكون المادة جاهزة. يمكن بكره اللي يروح يلاقي نسخ يعني تصور. اوكي استوها بتنضم لللينك كمان. حنان ناصر، في عندك اشي يا حنان؟
بس دكتور يعطيك العافية.
زين الله يعافيكي.
دكتور أنا مش بالأردن فما بقدر أحصل المادة، يا ريت تقدر توفر إلها PDF.
كيف يعني أنا بدي أدور على جهة تصور لي الكتاب PDF يا حنان؟ يعني
ما بعرف دكتور، بس أنا
ما
عن
بعرف.
جد ما بقدر أجيب المادة.
I don't know what to do. يعني الكتاب مش متوفر على النت يعني للأسف. إذا مش بالأردن يمكن تحصلي عن طريق أمازون يعني.
تمام بشوف دكتور.
أوكي alright.
ماشي يعطيك العافية.
الله يعافيك. لازم نشتري الكتاب طبعا يعني عشان نعيد نفس
بس حاولي إنك تجيبي بكير لأنه أمازون بتطول.
أوكي alright. Let's start talking about applied linguistics. شو يا إسلام؟ عاجب هالعدد إنه صار 130 إسلام يعني؟ أوكي هو صحيح 131 عدد كبير، لكن إذا أخذت إنه الشعبة فيها 222 أو 220 whatever، هذول اللي حاضرين بيطلعوا حوالي 62% فقط من عدد الطلاب اللي مسجلين بالمادة. إذا بنمشي بالنسبة في عندك حوالي 38% مش حاضرين. طيب طيب هو كعدد أكيد عدد كبير، بس كنسبة مش كثير. على أي حال، بس يبعثون كشف بآخر الشهر بأسماء اللي بيحضروا بيدخلوا على المادة، يبين معنا. أوكي. على أي حال نبدأ الحديث عن applied linguistics. Linguistics and applied linguistics and the ongoing debate whether linguistics and applied linguistics are two different fields or they're complementary fields, or is, as I said, is an ongoing debate. Yes, Islam.
Well, like it is fine. We didn't have a book.
Yeah.
It is fine, like to start, or it's just an introduction.
Yeah, this is an introduction to just to get to know what's meant by applied linguistics and what's the difference between linguistics and applied linguistics, if there is any, and how they are different. And
yeah, because we didn't get the book yet, so that's why.
This is an introduction. I don't have the book open, and I'm just gonna say things from the top of my head. So
okay, it's fine. Okay.
You're taking applied linguistics, and somebody asks you a question, what's applied linguistics? And you try to define applied linguistics, and then the other question comes, is there a difference between linguistics and applied linguistics?
Yes.
In what way they are different? If there are differences, what do we do in linguistics that we do not do in applied linguistics, or the other way around? Things like that, okay? So we know what we are taking and what the course or how the course is going to unfold as we go along. Okay. Actually, if you think of applied linguistics as a term compared to the term linguistics, the term applied linguistics is relatively new, relatively speaking. As a term, of course, as a term, but as a practice, it has existed for tens of centuries, if not more, in its earliest form, because applied linguistics started as something and turned out to be something else. Okay. Now, in the 1940s, that was the time of the WW2. You know what WW2 is, right?
Yes, the World War II.
World War II.
Okay. There was a need for developing methods and approaches that would speed up the process of language learning. in the United States in particular, and many other countries as well, but you know, since the world focuses on what goes on in the United States, so it was something that they talked about in the United States more than any other place else. So they realized that they needed to teach people foreign languages in a very short period of time. And of course, this period of time, I mean, though short, the outcome must be something that is efficient, that we need people who, like, after 6 months of studying the language, be able to speak, have conversations with others, understand what others says, because they want to send those people to different parts of the world. The war is going on, and they need people to bring them information about what goes on in different parts of the world at that time. And they invested lots of money to develop such approaches to language teaching. Of course, at that time, there were many different methods and approaches in language teaching. One very famous and old method is known as the grammar translation method, and the direct method, and the natural approach, and many other methods were available and used by people in different schools on how to teach languages. So the American government invested at that time millions of US dollars to develop such an approach. And the outcome, as we'll talk about it later on, the outcome of this investment was the development of the so-called the contrastive analysis approach, where people would compare languages and find out similarities and differences between languages, and focus on teaching differences and ignore similarities. So that way they wouldn't waste time teaching people things that, if they are translated from the mother tongue to the new language, to the target language, they would result in no problems. Rather, instead, we will focus on what's different between languages, because that's where difficulties are. And the development of this approach, of course, and the research developed as a result, led to the publication of a journal known as Language Learning Journal. Okay, and the name of the journal, Language Learning, continued to be used until 1948. Until 1948, when they decided that they want to change the name. The name is not good enough, okay? And therefore, they introduced for the first time the term applied linguistics. So that was the first time they have coined the term, and they have named the journal Applied Linguistics. Yes, Islam. Go ahead.
Doctor?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but just like, what does this word mean, like applied linguistics? We already know linguistics.
Yeah,
what does
we're coming to that, Islam. Don't rush into things. Okay.
Okay.
We will come to that. So they have coined the term applied linguistics for the first time. That was the first time people ever came across the term applied linguistics, and it was a term used as a name of a journal known as Language Learning Journal, and it's still published today under the name language learning, and it's a very famous journal, by the way. So in 1948, they have changed the name from language learning to applied linguistics. Therefore, at that time, the term applied linguistics was associated with language teaching and learning and language learning. So you see, when the term was coined, it meant the field of linguistics that is concerned with language learning and language teaching. Okay? So when you think of the term applied linguistics at that time, in the 1950s, it meant it is the field of linguistics that is concerned with language learning and language teaching. Good enough?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
Doctor, yes.
Okay. So that is the meaning of the term when it started. Okay, started to mean the field or the subfield of linguistics that is concerned with language learning and language teaching. And the journal was publishing research about the different theories and methods and approaches that deal with language learning and language teaching. Okay, this name didn't last long before they went back to the old name of the journal. They were not happy, they were not satisfied with the term applied linguistics. So maybe in less than a year time, they went back and they changed the name of the journal again to the journal known as Language Learning Journal, okay, or Journal of Language Learning. And they dropped the term applied linguistics. Okay. So they stopped using the term applied linguistics. But people were happy with the term applied linguistics. Years after years, they liked the term somehow, and they thought, well, maybe this field is more relevant to the practical side of the language than linguistics as such, because people associated the term linguistics with fields like syntax, phonology, morphology, semantics, okay, historical linguistics, things like that. And therefore, they said these fields of linguistics, the so-called linguistic studies, were concerned with language structure and language form more than anything else. So when you talk about linguistics, whether it's syntax or phonology or morphology or semantics or historical linguistics, you're really concerned with language form and language structure. But something is missing in all of this. What is it? It is language in use. Yes, Bushra.
Yes, I wanted to say language use.
Language use, yes. And those people who thought about this, they had in mind that language use is actually more important than language form, because there are lots of language problems that are related to language use more than language form. Okay, and we need a field of linguistics that deals with language use more than just being concerned with language form. Okay, And that is actually what applied linguistics do. Applied linguistics as a field, it is concerned with solving language problems in society. Okay, because there are lots of sociolinguistics problems, there are lots of pragmatic problems, problems pertaining to language identity, problems related to gender issues, problems related to large pieces of discourse rather than focusing on language at the sentence level, problems related to language minorities, problems related to specialized forms of language that are used with the special registers. And these are like the languages of doctors, of lawyers, language of law, language of medicine, language, and the interaction that goes between doctor and doctor, doctor and patient, lawyer and client, lawyers among themselves, lawyers and judges. And they said people do not use the same form of language. And that if doctors were to talk to their patients the way they talk to other doctors, there will be no understanding between the doctor and his patient. Okay, so when two doctors meet and talk about a certain case, medical case, they do not use the same language that they use when they're talking to a person who's not from the medical profession. So all these problems which are related to language use need to be handled by subfields of linguistics, if you like to call them, or applied linguistics. Okay, because they're more important, far more important than just focusing on language structure. Okay, whether the sentence is active or passive, whether there is a relative clause, or there is coordination, or there is subordination, or there is topicalization, there is a fronting, preposing, postposing, whether there is a process of assimilation, vowel insertion, vowel deletion, whether words are formed by prefixation, suffixation, or infixation, or what have you. There are more important problems that have to do with language than just focusing on these formal aspects of language. And this is the beginning, the marking point, if you like, of the revival of applied linguistics as a much wider field than linguistics as such. Now we know that in the 50s and 60s, the dominating schools in linguistics and psycholinguistics were structuralism and behaviorism. The structuralist school in linguistics and the behaviorist school in psychology, which was based on certain premises that language learning is a habit formation, that the problems of learning a second language are completely based on the interference of the mother tongue, that we should teach students to get rid of the old habits, which is L1, and focus on learning the new habits, which is L2. And that the human brain has no role in the learning process, and that the human brain is like an empty sheet. You can write on it whatever you want. So it's up to the teacher to write the new language in the human brain without any cognitive participation on the part of the language learner. Yeah, so these were the basic assumptions of the structuralist and the behaviorist schools that were dominating in the late 40s, 50s, and early 60s. In the late 50s, if you like, and early 60s, a new school of linguistics was born. And this is the so-called the mentalist school. Okay, and the founding father of this school was Noam Chomsky. And I'm sure you're familiar with the name Chomsky. And at that time also, a school in psychology was developed, which is the cognitive school, which believed that the major player in the learning process is the human brain. Okay, so it's contrary to what was believed before, that there is no role for the human brain. No, they say, under the new psychology schools, that actually people do the learning themselves. They do not learn by memorization, imitation, mimicry, and things like that, as the structuralist and behaviorist school used to believe. The structuralist and behaviorist school assumed that language is a habit formation, and the way to learn language is through memorization. Okay, you imitate your teachers and you memorize what's written in the books and you reproduce what you have memorized. So it's like a tape recording. No, the new school believed that actually the role of the teacher is to guide the learner, but the learner does the learning by themselves. Okay, they do the learning. They are active participants. They're not passive listeners. And the human brain actually has certain parameters, principles that are suitable to make people learn any language they want. And these principles are born with the human being. So his brain is not an empty sheet. Okay, it's not a blank sheet. It's not a tabula rasa. Every individual is born with principles. These principles are universal. They are universal. So all humans on earth are born with these principles. And these principles are suitable to make you learn any language, okay? And therefore, language is innate, شيء فطري, okay? It's not something that you learn. مش هي مجموعة من السلوكيات تكتسب. No, it is something innate, شيء فطري. And you develop this innate process of learning languages. You develop it through exposure to languages. So if you are exposed to English, you will be able to learn English. If you're exposed to Chinese, you will be able to learn Chinese. And French, you will be able to learn French. So you have the capacity to learn any human language because you are equipped with this gift, this natural gift that enables you to learn any language. Of course, the case in children is more obvious than it is with adults. Now, if you take a 2-year-old child or 3-year-old child to France, less than a year and that child will be a native speaker of French. Move to Germany, and in a very short period of time, that person would become a native speaker of German. And anywhere, you take the child anywhere, and that child in a very short period of time would become a native speaker of that language. And there is no limit as to how many languages a person can learn. So some people are bilinguals, that means they speak 2 languages. Some are trilinguals. Some are polyglots. Polyglots, that means they speak 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, maybe, I don't know, 12, 15 languages. Some people have the capacity to do this because they are born with the principles, the universal principles that enable them to learn languages. Now, the Chomsky school, the mentalist school, started to focus on language form and to see if the theories they have proposed work for all languages, because they are interested in this universal aspect of the language. Okay? They are interested in this universal aspect of the language. But then later on, Chomsky's own students began to realize that we need actually more than this. We need to focus on language in use, because knowing the rules of language does not mean I can use the language appropriately in social life. This is what students like yourself would find themselves doing in case they travel to an English-speaking country. So you travel to the United States, for example, with a BA in English, okay, and you think, oh, I have no problem at all. I have a BA in English and I can communicate with people the way I like. And to your surprise, you discover that the language you have learned is not good enough to make you communicate properly with others. Okay? You discover that there are problems, missing parts of language that you have not learned. And you begin to ask yourself, okay, was I like studying English or was I studying something else? Okay? And it takes you like a couple, 3, 4 months to adjust the language that you have learned to the new situation, and you try to fill the gaps that were missing in what you have learned. Yes, Sarah.
Yeah, about this, when you go to, when you go abroad to another, foreign country or something like that, you get astonished, surprised about the difference.
Yeah.
And yeah, like making so many mistakes, but the thing that we don't practice. So if you have, or if you are creating a programmatic, practical, vibrant, environment, and you can like practice all the time with yourself, or having some techniques that you can be creative by creating them, it helps you in many different ways, and to really enhance and better your level in English. So yeah, people here, they get really afraid, and it feels a little bit bizarre for them, awkward, if they speak up openly and they be vocal and frank about talking in English, because here, even in Jordan, people criticize each other. There's like mockery. Like if you make a mistake, they just mock you or criticize you. But you need to break the ice and don't give a don't give a heck about it. And yeah, just to practice. Enhance your level.
I mean, this is true, but you see, I mean, native speakers of the language wouldn't like bother to correct you for problems and mistakes pertaining to language form. Okay, if the meaning or if meaning is delivered, okay, and message is received, then they will not bother to correct your language problems pertaining to language forms. But then you discover that you have problem if the form is correct, but it doesn't make sense to them in their language, okay? Because we have cultural differences, we have pragmatic differences, we have so many differences that are related to language use more than language form. The thing is that when we teach language in a foreign setting, like in Jordan or any other place where English is not the medium of communication, we tend to focus on form more than on actual use of the language. And that creates problems because we are not familiar with the culture, we are not immersed in the culture, and therefore we tend to face problems. Okay. Forget about what people do here for criticizing you for not pronouncing correctly or for not or for making grammatical mistakes or for using, you know, a mixture of formal and informal language. What you really worry about is being able to communicate with the native speakers of the language. Native speakers of the language do not really bother to criticize people about the way they speak or their, you know, accent or their grammatical problems, or as long as there is a channel of communication going on, okay? Because they have been exposed to different foreign nationals who speak language differently. And if you think about it, there are like 4 or 5 times the number of non-native speakers of the language than there are native speakers of the language. So you're talking about like 500 million native speakers of English, and yet you're talking about 2 billion non-native speakers of the English language. So people are familiar with the different ways in which English is used. But what bothers people most is to use the language in a socially inappropriate way, okay? Social appropriateness is very important in language use, okay? So, yani, it's not acceptable by any means. Like if you meet a woman in an English-speaking country and you say to her, "How old are you?" Okay? After she asks you, "How old are you?" and you tell her your age, and then you repeat the question to her and you say, "How old are you?" That's very offensive because it's socially inappropriate. The question itself is correct. There is no problem as far as grammar is concerned, as far as probably pronunciation is concerned, but there is social appropriacy, okay, which is lacking. People have to learn when to use language appropriately, okay? When you say something offensive and something that is not offensive, okay? Because people sometimes, without any intention on your part, you say something that offends other people because you think that culturally these are the same in the Arab culture and the English culture as well. No, there are differences. There are cultural differences that we have to be aware of. There are social norms that may seem to you appropriate, but may seem to others inappropriate. So things like that, okay? What kind of pragmatic function that might be understood from saying something, okay? Will it be received as a polite gesture or as an impolite gesture? Okay, how about these politeness aspects and the politeness theory of language use and language function? Things like that are not really focused on in teaching languages, and that creates gaps in the system that we have learned, and it will take us time to fill in these gaps and try to bridge the gaps between us and the native speakers of the language. So yeah, and this is the concern, really. This is the concern of applied linguistics. Okay. Now, applied linguistics is also concerned with understanding language and identity. Take the problem of Black English, okay, in the United States. When the Americans used to have segregated schools for white people and school for blacks, okay, that was considered inappropriate in the American society, and the blacks started to demonstrate against that, asking for their civil rights as citizens of the United States. And then the problem was solved, and schools began to take blacks and whites together at the same time. But then they started to realize that Black people didn't perform as well as the white people in schools. And the number of dropouts from schools among the blacks is way higher than it is among white people. And why is this poor performance of Black people? Okay, well, it took them a while to discover that white people do not speak the English spoken by white people. Those people speak Black English, which is different in form and structure and use than the English used by white people. And now in America, they have schools and they have universities for Black people. And when they started to send the Black people to Black schools and Black universities, they started to excel, okay? And they started to graduate medical doctors and lawyers and scientists and all of that. Now, of course, the Black schools are not limited only to Black people. White people can join these schools, but they realize that when Blacks are taught by Black people using Black English as a medium of instruction, they realize that Black people do much better in schools. Problems like these were only discovered by applied linguistics, not by linguistic proper. Hussam. Yes,
Doctor?
Hussam. Yeah.
Sorry for interruption, but I just got in the class, so I just want to ask about the book, because I am in the library.
You're where?
In the library, Star bookshop.
In the bookshop? What bookshop يا حسام؟
Star.
هو في المكتبة.
مكتبة الجامعة. You're in the
مكتبة الأستاذ قبال بوابتنا.
مكتبة مين؟
الأستاذ. بس بسأل إنه الكتاب إيش اسمه أو غلافه.
الكتاب موجود في مؤسسة حمادة فقط.
فقط
مش موجود عند حد غيرهم، لا.
تمام.
Okay.
Sorry doctor.
No problem. Okay. Yes, رنيم.
يعطيك العافية دكتور.
أهلين، الله يعافيكي.
بدي أسأل إذا لازم نحجز الكتاب قبل ما نروح ولا عادي ممكن نشتريه أي وقت؟
ممكن تشتريه، هم عندهم الأسماء وبس تشتريه، هم بيشطبوه على الاسم، بيحطوا تك عند الاسم.
دكتور أنا حكيت معهم هسه بس حكوا ما في داعي.
إيش؟
أنا هسه حكيت مع المكتبة حكوا لي ما في داعي نحجز عادي.
موجود، بس تروح تشتري وبيحطوا خط عند اسمك إنه فلان اشترى، صح؟
بالضبط.
نعم، شكرا يا أحمد. Okay. All right. Done with the book problem, يا حسام. You're still raising your hand, حسام. Hello. وين حسام؟
بالمكتب بجوز مش سامعك دكتور.
لأنه بعده رافع إيده فكرته موجود على الخط. أنوار، يلا يا أنوار. كمان بطلت أنوار يعني؟ أوكي. All right. ما في مشكلة. Okay, we'll continue with this. So as you see, applied linguistics is concerned with language and use, but it doesn't mean that applied linguistics is not as well concerned with language form. Okay, so because people started to look into language and use, so many fields or subfields of applied linguistics began to appear and to gain momentum and have specialists as subfields of linguistics. So because of the interest in applied linguistics, we started to find fields such as psycholinguistics, neurolinguistics, if you like, sociolinguistics, discourse analysis, pragmatics, language learning, second language acquisition, first language acquisition, contrastive discourse, contrastive rhetoric, error analysis, contrastive analysis, language and gender, language identity, language testing, language ethnicity, language attrition, language minorities. There are nowadays we have about 64 subfields of applied linguistics. 64 subfields of applied linguistics. Okay? These subfields of applied linguistics to try to relate linguistics to the actual use of language. Try to relate linguistics to the actual use of language. We have also world Englishes. We have so many subfields. Yes, yeah, Bushra.
What's the main difference between applied linguistics and linguistics applied?
Okay, now people started to, of course, there were like so many associations of applied linguistics began to appear in different parts of the world. United States, Britain, Australia, New Zealand, everywhere. Okay, because the field became so popular and because it started to solve language problems pertaining to language use and language in society. That's why we started to see so many different associations of applied linguistics. Now, the debate among linguists began to focus on whether applied linguistics is actually different from linguistics. Now, for people in Europe and in Australia and New Zealand, they said, well, let's have the two terms separately. And we say that linguistics is when you are interested in studying the form of language, studying syntax, studying phonology, studying morphology, studying semantics, studying historical linguistics, okay, then you are in linguistics. So these 5 disciplines in Europe were associated with the term linguistics. So linguistics is concerned only with the theoretical aspect of language. And by the theoretical aspect of language, they mean these 5 disciplines or 5 sub-disciplines. Okay? It is the fields or the subfields that are concerned with language structure and language form. Okay? Everything else, we will call it applied linguistics. Everything else, we will call it applied linguistics because it is concerned with language in actual use. So, sociolinguistics is applied linguistics. Discourse analysis is applied linguistics. Conversational analysis is applied linguistics. Second language acquisition is applied linguistics. First language acquisition is applied linguistics. Contrastive analysis, error analysis, interlanguage, language and gender, language and identity, language and ethnicity, language and minorities, bilingualism, language and gender, and all these popular fields of linguistics are applied linguistics. Now, in the American school, things are perceived differently. They say there is no such thing as linguistics. There is no such thing as linguistics. What we have is applied linguistics, because applied linguistics is concerned with form and with language application or linguistic application in all other fields. Now, the fields that focus on the theoretical aspect of language, we will call them linguistics applied. Because what we have under linguistics applied is theoretical aspects of language that we can apply to different languages and dialects. Okay? So, those who call themselves theoretical linguists actually are not theoreticians, because the theoreticians are limited in number. Okay? They are limited in number. Those who come up with theories of linguistics. Okay, people talk about Chomsky, people talk about Labov, people talk about Harris, people talk about Halley, people talk about, but those are limited in number. Okay? What we have, those who call themselves linguists, actually what they do is they do linguistics applied. They take the theoretical aspect of language and they try to apply this to different languages and dialects. So what they write about is like relativization in Jordanian Arabic, okay? Subject deletion in Ajloni dialect, for example, okay? And pronoun deletion in Italian, and so on, okay? Doing this, vowel epenthesis, for example, in a certain dialect, stress assignment in Iraqi Arabic, or in Russian, or whatever, okay? This is what they call linguistics applied, okay? Because people who do this actually do not come up with new theories. What they do is they take the theory and apply it to dialects and languages, okay? And they like to call themselves linguists. Now, those are called, okay, specialized in linguistics applied, all right? And then on the other side, we have applied linguistics. What applied linguistics does, try to relate the theoretical aspect to language in actual use in society. And then based on the findings of the actual use of language in society, we may come up with new insight into the theory. So if you try to look up the term applied linguistics on the internet or on Wikipedia, if you like, just write the term applied linguistics, you're going to find listed under the term applied linguistics, you will find syntax, semantics, phonology, morphology, historical linguistics, plus sociolinguistics, phonetics, language acquisition, discourse analysis, and all the fields. So everything is listed under applied linguistics. And therefore, the majority of linguists see applied linguistics as a large umbrella that have beneath it or under it both the theoretical aspect, the linguistics applied, and the applied linguistics. So everything is listed as applied linguistics, okay? But on the other hand, you have narrow-minded people who think that applied linguistics is not linguistics, okay? And those are not really, they have a misunderstanding of what applied linguistics is, because they don't know what applied linguistics is. Even in language acquisition, you have theoretical language acquisition. Even in sociolinguistics, you have theoretical sociolinguistics. In neurolinguistics, you have theoretical neurolinguistics, because it's a field of linguistics that study the human brain function and what happens in the human brain when people have accidents or injuries that happen to their brain, and how language sometimes is lost, and how language is moved to a different brain cell, or cannot be retrieved, or something like that. It is a field of linguistics that relates even to the field of medicine as well, okay? Because neurology اللي هو علم الأعصاب وهذا من هون إجت تركيبة neurolinguistics, okay? So you have fields in applied linguistics that are theoretically founded. But on the other hand, you have fields of applied linguistics that are purely practical, like language teaching, for example, language learning and language teaching. When you start talking about methodology or methods of language learning and language teaching, this is purely practical, purely practical. And you have fields which fall in between theory and between applied, between practice, between theory and between practice, such as lexicography, for example, علم المعاجم. Okay, lexicography, it has a practical side and it has a theoretical side as well. Fields like contrastive rhetoric, okay, fields like pragmatics, it has theoretical aspects and it has practical aspects, okay? So applied linguistics then is divided into three major domains, okay? The linguistics applied, where you have syntax, pragmatics, syntax and morphology and phonology and historical linguistics and things like that. And then you have applied linguistics, and under applied linguistics, you will have theoretical applied linguistics, practical applied linguistics, and the in-between fields that try to relate theory to application as well, okay? That's where the distinction between linguistics, applied linguistics, and linguistics applied came in. So actually, in today's linguistics, modern linguistics, there is a large umbrella known to be applied linguistics. And under this large umbrella, you have linguistics and applied linguistics as well, okay? You have the new division, linguistics applied and applied linguistics, okay? And as I said, you can look this up in Wikipedia, on the internet, write the term applied linguistics, and there you can find that it is listed. All the fields and subfields are listed, and they include syntax, semantics, phonology, morphology, phonetics, sociophonetics, whatever you call it, it is listed all under applied linguistics. So that's why it's important for us to study applied linguistics, because it caters for all language-related aspects, whether form-wise or language in use and language function. culture is an important component. So society is a very important component. Okay, the psychology of the individuals within a society is very important, is a very important component. All these factors contribute and complete the picture of language learning and language use. Okay, any question up to this point? في حد عنده أي استفسار أي
دكتور بعد إذنك
Yes.
سؤال.
Yes, go ahead.
بس بالنسبة للي حكيته كله بالنسبة للأبلايد لينغويستكس واللينغويستكس بشكل عام هذا الحكي كله راح يكون موجود في الكتاب in detail صح؟
أكيد. I think yes. Yes.
لأني
The
ما
thing
أخذت
is
نوت
that
له بصراحة.
okay. Okay. The thing is that we will read about it in the book, and of course يعني being a fourth year students, which I assume many of you are, we have to do like extra readings. We have to I mean nowadays we are like blessed with the internet and everything we can find on Google.
Yes, sure.
So yeah, so we have to like do our extra readings in addition to what is found in the book. Okay, yeah, but it is yeah, it is available in this book and in many other books. Okay,
thank you.
you're welcome.
دكتور والله لو سمحت سؤال.
تفضلي.
هسه متى راح ينزل تسجيل، متى راح تبعت تسجيل المحاضرة على التليجرام؟
Okay, today inshallah, once it is complete, once it completes downloading the video, I'll upload it to Telegram.
إن شاء الله دكتور يسعدك.
No problem. All right. Any other comment, any other addition, inquiry about a certain point? Not bad, 140. That means that we have about 80 or to 82 people who missed the classes today. But that's okay. 140 is good enough. And those who are interested, I hope those who are joining are listening to us. Not yes, Hussam al-Din.
Should we take the European view of linguistic or the American one?
Everything. I mean, this is like a broader perspective of understanding linguistics.
Okay,
but,
thanks.
Yeah, but if you wanna like go by the founding schools, modern linguistics today is actually founded by the American School of Linguistics.
So
okay?
So when we
everybody is following the American school because the founding father of modern linguistics is Noam Chomsky, and he is from the United States.
So when we talk about linguistics, we should use the applied linguistic and the linguistic applied, yes?
Right, yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any other? Okay. Hopefully, I hope you will have the book by Thursday, everybody, and start to read chapter 1. So, and the introduction before that. So we can recap on what we have said today, and then talk about the things that we have not talked about from the book. Okay. Until then, have a nice time. Okay. يعطيكم العافية جميعا.